everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining us. My name is Lauren Williams. I'm Adult and Community Services Manager here at the Columbia Public Library, which is part of the Daniel Boone Regional Library System. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn, where we're going to learn about Solarize Columbia. This Lunch and Learn, as all of them are co-hosted by the library and the League of Women Voters of Columbia Boone County, and we really appreciate that partnership. We have people here in the room, but also we have several people attending on Zoom. So just a couple of Zoom housekeeping items. If you're on Zoom and want to ask a question, go ahead and use the chat feature. We ask that you use the drop-down menu in chat and select to chat with everyone so that everybody can see what questions have been asked. And then when it's time for those in the front room to ask questions, I will run around with this microphone and ask you to use it just so the folks on Zoom can also hear the questions asked. We're recording this presentation, so it will be available in the next day or two on both the library's website and as well as the League of Women Voters website for future viewing if you want to share it with friends and family. And now I'd like to welcome Barbara Hoppy with the League of Women Voters to say a few words and to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Lauren, for always working with us, and thanks to the Columbia Public Library for being a co-host of the Lunch and Learn program. Today, we are going to hear from three people about a new program, a new really excellent program called Solarize Columbia. And the League of Women Voters has been involved in helping to set this up and on the steering committee for quite a while. So we're really pleased to present this to the public and hope the public takes this opportunity to address climate change and reduce their utility bills. So our first speaker is Carolyn Amperin. She's the chair of the local Sierra Club. She's been a leader for many years in Columbia on renewable energy and the environment. And she's been really the chair of our steering committee, both for 100% renewable energy goals for the city of Columbia, as well as Solarize Columbia. And then we're also going to hear from Casey Filer, who's from Solar Crowdsource, and she will be joining us from Asheville, Carolina. And Casey is a project manager there, and we've been working with Solar Crowdsource. And she, has a degree in environmental science and policy and sustainable tourism, and has been working for several years with Solar Crowdsource. And then the last but not least person we'll be hearing from is Frank Weimar, and he's with Dogwood Solar. And Dogwood Solar is our selected contractor for Solarize Columbia for putting low cost group solar in Columbia, residential, commercial, nonprofit. So with that, I'll turn this over to Carolyn Amperin.
Hey, good day, everyone. My name is Carolyn Amperin, as she said, and what my job is here today is to help you understand about the local support for this program. We initially, the steering committee members initially learned about a Solarize program in Kansas City, and that it had been effective in helping the residents of that community or the businesses of that community install more solar. And so as a coalition of groups that are interested in helping to address climate change, but then also helping people, have more affordable homes, we wanted to see about bringing that to Columbia. And so after some investigation and talking with Kansas City employees, it's turned out that it seemed like a really good opportunity for us. So our group got together, and I want to go to the next slide.
She's gonna have to do it online. Katie,
Okay.
next slide.
So our group got together and we basically started going through these steps that Solar Crowdsource out of North Carolina helps communities walk through. And one of the reasons that we wanted to do this was to make solar more affordable, but also more accessible. And what I mean by more accessible is that we did some of the heavy lifting for you. One of the things that keeps people from buying something like solar is that, you have to get multiple bids, or at least you probably should. You may not understand the technology, so that's kind of an inhibitor. and you may not understand the equipment, so that's an inhibitor. So we wanted to take some of that heavy lifting off. So these partners, Renew Missouri, Sierra Club, League of Women Voters, PeaceWorks, and the City of Columbia Sustainability Office, we got together and put together a request for proposal that went out to of all the solar providers in the area. And people and those providers had an opportunity to respond. And we evaluated their responses not only on price, but on customer service and quality of their equipment. And out of that, we chose Dogwood Solar. So I want to just help make you comfortable that that homework has been done for you. And so it makes it a little bit easier to get into this process. We've also done the homework to help understand what's going on, like for example, with federal tax credits, both for residential customers, nonprofits, and businesses. And this program is open to all of those groups. And also wanted to make sure, even though we called it Solarize Columbia, it's open to all of those groups in Boone County. So if you know people who live outside of Columbia proper, they certainly can participate in this as well. And we'd encourage you to share one of the brochures with them. And I just encourage the people who are online to get the same information that's in the brochure at solarizecolumbia.com. And for the people in the room, these brochures are on that table. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Casey, who's with Solar Crowdsource, and she's going to take us through some more details about it.
Thank you, Carolyn. Hi, everyone. My name is Casey Filer. I'm with Solar Crowdsource. A quick background on us. We are a regional solar campaign organizer. So we are invited into communities to help facilitate these community solar programs. And we're referred to by the Kansas City program. So Carolyn already highlighted our coalition partners and installer, but again, just want to say thank you to them. Being based in a different part of the country, it's great to have such involved community partners who help make the whole campaign happen. So we're going to start off with an overview of Solarize Columbia, just to give you a quick introduction to what these campaigns are made up of. And then we'll transition on to our installer, who will get more into the nitty-gritty and be able to dive deep into the solar process. So Solarize Columbia is a community-based program that focuses on clean energy adoption of solar energy. And we are able to create a lower purchasing price point for participants through a group purchasing model. And we do that through tiered pricing, which we'll get onto in a later slide. But this program is open to residential homes, commercial businesses, and nonprofits. And one of the ways we organize these programs is to have these community partners like League of Women's Voters and the Sierra Club and many more interview installers who submit applications through an RFP process, and we interview them and we go over their proposed model for the program, panels, technology types, pricing on them, and they basically go through every aspect of what you would receive in a proposal, and they go down the line and make sure that, you know, we're creating the best program model possible. So once we evaluate all of those proposal materials, you get a fairly straightforward pricing model that each person will receive. And you can see more of those pricing details on technologies on our website as well, solarizecolumbia.com. But the main goal of this is just to make solar energy a more streamlined process, to make it more affordable and accessible to the everyday consumer that does not have an encyclopedic knowledge of solar energy. Righty. So why go solar? Solar lowers your monthly electricity bills, and unlike an energy utility that fluctuates in price, it is a fairly stable bill that you get. Obviously, with our more cold months or extreme heat, your bill will fluctuate depending on how much you're using your HVAC system, things like that. But you're more protected from energy spikes, which I know was a recent decision that's happening around Columbia with an increase in rate from utilities. Solar does not emit pollutants, which is great for the planet. And lastly, there is a 30% federal tax credit available to consumers as well as local utility incentives, which we'll get into later. So like I said, there are tax credits. They are expiring in the end of 2025 for residential homes. What this means we'll go over later, but it is important to note that this decision was made in the summer of this year, and it's changed the timeline for us, and it's important that this knowledge gets to you now so that you'll be able to make a decision. And there's a group purchase discount through our bulk purchasing model of up to 20%, depending on our tier we've reached to in the end. And yes, once you sign up for this campaign, you get a free, no obligation solar evaluation. No obligation, meaning you can have somebody come out to your house and they can give you a proposal. And if you don't want it, you don't have to get it. You know, you're not signing up for anything. You just put your name in a poll, but you are not obliged to act. So important dates, I want to spend a little bit more time on this because it can get confusing. We launched in July and we got a little bit thrown off by the end of the federal tax credits decided by the One Big Beautiful Bill that was passed. So we were getting flooded with questions from people. How can I make sure to get my system installed by the end of 2025 to qualify for that tax credit? A lot of people were flooding to their installers, making sure that they are able to claim the tax credit in the timeline of their contract. And in our conversations with Dogwood Solar, they gave us a new deadline, which is September 26th, saying that contracts would be due on then to have the best chance of claiming that federal tax credit. That does not mean the campaign ends September 26th. It's still rolling, it's still open, and it's just a deadline to have the best chance of claiming the tax credit. On an individual basis, talk to your solar representative just to make sure. But that's an added deadline within the program just so that people are best informed about what they qualify for. Our enrollment deadline is still October 31st. So there's plenty of time to share the program with your friends, your neighbors, your family. And the enrollment is just signing up on the website saying, I'd like an evaluation. It does not mean you are committed to anything. Like I said earlier, it just qualifies you for a free no obligation assessment and the pricing that comes along with this campaign. And we do have to cut off signups. That way we can make sure that everybody gets contracted within a certain deadline. And that's where January 31st comes. That's the residential contract deadline, which is 3 months later. By then, you should have your proposal on hand, your questions asked, and that's when we submit it for contracts. We created a separate commercial and nonprofit deadline because unlike a two-person decision in a household, you have to go through boards and a whole bunch of other steps through commercial, nonprofit, and businesses. So we made it a little bit later on April 30. So that tier pricing system I was talking about earlier is shown on the screen right now. This is the residential pricing tiers for Solarize Columbia. As you can see, tier 1 right here on the far left is $2.68 per kilowatt. What that means is the 0 through 100 kilowatts on the bottom, everybody signs up in that price tier would get the $2.68 per kilowatt. Once we surpass that 100 kilowatt number and go into further tiers and so on and so forth, you will receive the pricing marked in each bar. Now, that does not mean that at the very end of the campaign, if we hit tier 8 and we've got that $2.52 pricing, that the people who signed up earlier in the campaign are out of luck and they paid more than the final person. Anybody who signed up prior to the final tier that we reached during the campaign will be reimbursed to match that final tier price in the form of a rebate check. So if you signed up all the way in the beginning, you're an early adopter, you wanted to get on board quick, and you didn't reach the lowest pricing, like the people at the very end, you will receive compensation to match the final price. This is the commercial pricing graphic. We'll get into this more in our commercial event. That'll be later on this month, but this is on a case-by-case basis. So larger systems, larger saving amount. But to go deeper into the federal tax credit for residential solar, this timeline was changed. It was originally going to be in 2032, and unfortunately now it's ending in 2025. The installation queues are filling up, which is why we created that deadline so that people who maybe contract in October, November think that they're aware that they might not be able to claim on tax credit. Because unlike a car, you can't just purchase it and take it off the lot. Solar has a lot more steps when it comes to permitting, installation, permission to operate. It's a longer process, and having that time to make sure that your system is complete and final before the end of the year is very important. So the commercial and nonprofit solar tax credit is not ending at the end of 2025. We won't spend too much time on this, but important details are that it has to be placed in service by December 31st of 2027. And in addition to the federal tax credit, there's ongoing incentives and financing from the local utility, Columbia Water and Light. I know when I came up to visit for our launch event, I was very jealous of y'all's community solar down there. And then we spoke with Columbia Light representatives, and they told us all about the financing available through their utility of up to $15,000 for residential and up to $30,000 for commercial customers. Rebates for solar are listed above, and they've got different specifications, which your installer will be able to get into a little bit deeper for you and your home. But I'll end off here saying that if you'd like to sign up, our website is solarizecolumbia.com. And if you want to know a little bit more about solar for businesses and nonprofits, we are having an event September 30th from 12:30 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. It'll be an online webinar. If that sounds of interest to you, it is posted on our website. And yes, a final reminder that the best chance of claiming the federal tax credit would mean having a contract submitted by September 26, 2025, but the campaign still goes on past September 26th. It's just a friendly heads up. Now I'll pass it off to our installer, Dogwood Solar.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Frank. I am with Dogwood Solar. I've been with Dogwood for about 2.5+ years. And primarily, people always ask me, they're like, hey, what's your job title at Dogwood? And it's kind of a mixed hat thing, multiple hats, but most definitely on the front of client communications, as well as doing a lot of behind the scenes scheduling with site visits and proposal meetings and installations and all that good stuff. Can we go back to page 1 on this, please? All right, so today, I've done this before in the past, but thank you so much. I've done this presentation in the past, but I think unfortunately we had some Zoom issues on recording, so I wanted to go over this again so people can really understand our process and how Solarize Columbia and Dogwood Solar are working together. So first off, before we get to this presentation on the board, I wanted to kind of give you guys the heads up on how the sign up works and how I'm going to communicate with everybody. So the first thing you do, like pre-mentioned, go to the solarizecolumbia.com, sign up. That lead information is going to be gathered by Solarize Crowdsource, and they share those signups with me about twice a week. They usually send me a list beginning of the week as well as the end of the week. Once I receive those, I'm going to send out an initial touch base email. And basically that email, it is a little lengthy, but please read through it in detail. It does describe our process in detail and let you know how it's going to work. So once I send that initial email out to everybody, At that point, I reach out to the local utilities, either Columbia Water and Light or Boone Electric, and request your utility information. If you are on Ameren, you will be required to send me 12 to 24 months of utility bills PDF version, because I need all of the data that's on those bills. A screenshot of a bar graph or an average historical is not going to work. Dogwood Solar is all about the math and science behind solar, and I need your monthly kilowatt hours as well as the potential of a demand that might be on there as well. So once I gather all your utility information, that allows me to create what's called an energy profile. Basically, that's just the history of your home and how much electricity it uses. I use a couple different pieces of software. One called Energy Toolbase, as well as one that's called Scanify. And Scanify is the really cool program that we use. It actually allows me to provide you guys with a preliminary proposal. And what I can do is, with using a bunch of overhead maps, Google Earth, Google 3D, LiDAR, and a bunch of other shading tools, I can actually design a system on your home from my desk. And the reason we decided to go with this approach was because a lot of the times folks sign up for solar and they don't realize how expensive it's going to be. So we wanted to give people some budgets right out the gate to let them know what they're kind of looking at in terms of dollars and cents. Once I complete your preliminary proposal, I'm going to email that to you. And then typically at the end of the week, I will also shoot you a text message and let you know that you need to check your inbox. And it's from frank@dogwoodsolar.com. At that point, it's your opportunity to sit down and review that preliminary proposal in your email. If you have any questions, please call my office. And I will gladly walk through the proposal with you and kind of give you the high points and the low points of it. And at that point, if you still would like to proceed, that's when we're going to schedule a site visit. And that's where we're actually going to come out. We're going to look at your electric service. We're going to look at your service panel or your breaker box or your fuse box, as some people would call it. And then if the trees allow, we're also going to fly the house with the drone, which again is the same software program that I mentioned earlier, Scanify. And that drone flight actually allows us to make a 3D model of your home. And it does all of the production analysis as well as the shade analysis for your system. Once that site visit is completed, that following week, I'll upload the images, create that 3D model, design your system, and then reach out to you to schedule another in-person proposal meeting. That's when Dan, the owner of Dogwood, he'll come out, sit down, walk through the proposal with you, give you the high points, the low points. And then at that point, we're providing you the information that you need to decide if solar is right for you. We are a no pressure process, but we are always open to questions if you guys have any questions at that proposals meeting or following up. If you have any questions on, like, do we still have time? That's the big question I'm getting right now. So I wanted to share one of these preliminary proposals with everybody because I feel like they're really awesome in what they provide. So looking up here, the first page that we just clicked off of, that's my cover page. If the one thing that I want to point out, because it has created a little bit of confusion, and Casey mentioned it earlier, at the bottom of the page, you see the potential Solarize Columbia savings of $16,019. This is if the program were to get to tier 8. That would be your potential rebate check that would get mailed to you after the program's over. So next slide, please. So this particular home, I actually did 2 designs for this guy. He was actually going to utilize a Columbia Water and Light solar loan, so I was trying to get him in within budget. But this was my first design that I did. And basically, again, with my Scanify program, I can get on there, throw some panels on the roof, get some shade performance with all the 3D modeling. And this is kind of what it would have looked like if he would have went with this system size. So next. This is just a table of contents of what we're going to go through. So next, please. And then this is just some history about Dan and Dogwood Solar. Dogwood Solar was started in 2010. Dan mostly started out with solar thermal water heating. So if you use a lot of hot water, warming up water with sun, basically. He also did a lot of sun tunnels as well as skylights back in the day. But as the cost of PV or photovoltaics has gone down, the company has evolved into primarily a residential and commercial solar installation company. And we also do a lot of EV chargers as well. And we do a few off-grid as well as grid hybrid systems out there too with batteries, which is pretty exciting. Next, please. This again is just kind of a little bit of a portfolio about us. These are just some example systems. If anybody wants any referrals, by all means, please ask, and I'll be more than happy to share some existing client information with you, so you can reach out to them and see how good or great we are to work with. Now, next. This right here, page has a lot of data on it. And there's been some confusion because there's a lot of items on here that we actually don't use metrics for because we don't offer financing. But the one item we really like to show people and really like them to understand is the second line, which is called the levelized cost of energy. Long story short, once you install solar, this is what you're gonna be paying per kilowatt. So that's a big number for us, for a lot of folks to see. Hey, once I get a solar installed, this is what I'm gonna be paying per kilowatt hour. Next, please. This page and the next page are my two favorites because they're visual, and I feel like people can really understand what this proposal is going to provide. So bear with me, I'm going to turn around and look at this so I can make sure I read through this correctly. So the top left down, that's just like some general information about your shading data as well as your address. The next line there is going to be the type of panels that we're using and the quantity. And then below that basically is the price breakdown. Your contractor price is the top line, which in this case is $27,122. That is what you're going to pay Dogwood Solar in the entirety of. The next line is Columbia Water and Light Incentive, which was previously mentioned. Not only is Columbia Water and Light a wonderful utility because they have an amazing net metering policy, but they also have an additional rebate on top of the federal tax credit. And that is something that runs through the city of Columbia. I'll tell you right now, with doing these preliminary proposals, these are most definitely conservative numbers on the Columbia Water and Light rebate program. I don't want to tell people that it's going to be more than what it actually is. So I actually do a little bit of rounding down before I put that on there. And then lastly is the federal tax credit. And then the bottom line is going to be your net, which is what your ROI is based off of. On the right side, basically that's your system size for the PV system that we're going to install. And then right above the blue and orange bar graph is your average energy use in your home. So this particular individual, they use 2,000 plus kilowatt hours or 20,000 kilowatt hours annually in their home. And the system that I designed was going to provide him a 67% offset. And a lot of people have also asked me, hey, what's offset mean? Basically, you take that average energy use, and your PV system is going to provide 67% of that energy use throughout the annual year. So a lot of good data on that sheet, but just a good breakdown so folks can really understand what that means. Next, please. This page I also really like as well. The yellow/orange bar graphs are that average annual usage broke down by month. And then the blue line graph is actually the solar production of your system. So it kind of shows you what months you're not going to have bills. It's going to show you what months you're actually going to have some bills. So it's a really good depiction of how your system's going to perform throughout the year based on your average annual energy use. Next. Lastly, again, this was a Columbia Water and Light example. This is just basically the current Columbia Water and Light rates for residential. So just kind of a general breakdown of how they charge you. Next. This here is also something that speaks really well to folks. The top is your current utility bill, which again is based off that average utility history that I received from the city. And then the bottom is your utility bill once solar's installed. Next. Again, another cash flow sheet. I've had a lot of questions about this one too, in regards to some of the data at the top. I think again, a lot of that's financing option based. But again, this one's showing that the ROI on this project is going to be right in that 8-year mark. So kind of gives you a timeline. And at the bottom of the year, or at the bottom of the page, it actually shows you how much dollars and cents you're going to save on your electric bill over 30 years. So next. And then lastly, this is kind of the environmental benefits. It's not all three of them, but choose the one that you, speaks most to you. So in this case, this gentleman, if he would have went with this system size, he would have been saving, 211, cubic tons of CO2. He would have saved a little bit under 500,000 miles driven in a car, or he would have planted a little over 3,100 trees. So, that's the preliminary proposal you guys will receive from me. Again, it's got a lot of information. Feel free to reach out to me once you receive that in your email. I'll be more than happy to walk through it with you guys. I've had short conversations on the phone and I've had long conversations on the phone. They're all enjoyable. So feel free to reach out. I think we're gonna do a Q&A after this, so I'm sure there's a few other questions that might come up. But I did want to also mention a few points that were brought up earlier in the presentation. They mentioned September 26th is kind of the last time to sign up for solar to get into the program for the federal tax credit. I've had many conversations with folks, and solar is kind of a weird deal. Like, I feel like sometimes I'll sell nothing for weeks, and then 1 week I'll sell like 5 systems. So I just want everybody to know that September 26th deadline to sign your contracts is gonna be flexible. It may be early, it may be late. This was just kind of a general timestamp that we landed on. Also, something that's very exciting, we are very, very close to tier 2 right now. I think I need to sell 1 more system and then we're gonna hit tier 2, which is awesome for the residential side. And then another thing that I wanted to mention, because I'm sure this is gonna come up in the Q&A later. Currently, in terms of sold work, I am filling the second half of November right now. So I'm sold through the middle of November. I've sold a couple other jobs that are gonna land in the second half of November, but I'm currently filling the second half of November with our schedules. I know, everybody wants this, and this is a fantastic program. But I've mentioned to a couple folks with the ending of the federal tax credit, as well as the launching of Solarize Columbia, it's created the perfect storm. So, I am, working the leads, I'm working the leads in the order that I'm getting them. And I'm doing the best that I can to get people the information as fast as we can, but there will ultimately be a time when, the clock runs out. But, we're gonna do our best from here till then, to get the information to you guys that you need. And then lastly, Casey mentioned the process of actually installing solar on your home. A lot of people think, oh, I can sign a contract and then Dogwood Solar will be there the next day to put it up on my roof. That is not the case. On average, a residential installation takes about 2 to 4 weeks for permitting, submission of plans, and getting approval from the city, as well as building code, fire code, etc. And then on the commercial side, that can be a 4 to 8 week process when it comes to signing a contract, getting the as-built built, permitting, all that fun stuff. So don't think you can just call and sign up for solar on December 15th and think it can be done, because there won't be enough time. So just wanted to share those little snippets from earlier in the presentation. So as of now, I think that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Right, I know we already have questions online, some specific ones. At the beginning, of that proposal, there was a,
Frank might
Yeah,
want to stay
yes,
up there.
Sorry.
For answering.
at the beginning of the proposal, there was a, estimated credit. And I think you said 16,000, but I think it's 1,600, is that right?
Oh, yeah, my bad. I
Okay.
must have spoke incorrectly, but yes, that's if the Solarize Columbia program gets to tier 8. That's
Okay.
an estimated rebate check that you'll get back from the program. Yes.
So, and it sounds like the folks can get this information from a proposal, but someone's asking, is there a good website where you can A, deep dive on putting solar panels on my house, and B, calculate cost, amortizations, ROI?
You know, there are some websites out there. The one that pops in my head is PV Watts. You can go to that website and you can do some mathematics stuff on there in terms of like calculating your own. That's probably gonna be one of your best ones if you wanna do some freelance R&D, research and development. Yeah, PV Watts.
Watts, okay. Then, also they asked, it's very specific, they moved into a house, smaller house, about 1,250 square feet. Orientation is north-south. They have a large pin oak on the south, that shades the house, and a smaller pin oak in the front that provides some shade. it's a small footprint. So is it worth them exploring, progressing any further with considering putting solar on a house like that?
You know, that's a really, really good question. That's really, really tough to answer without looking at some overhead maps and having a conversation with that person. And it would also depend totally on their utility history. There's a lot of folks that don't use that much utility or kilowatt hours. So like, you know, it might only take, 5 or 10 panels to get you offset. So really, I have folks that call all the time and I love talking to people on a daily basis, but this is a very math and science heavy industry. And giving answers on that would be tough. My suggestion at this time would be go ahead and sign up for Solarize Columbia at the solarizecolumbia.com website. And then I'll be glad to provide you with a preliminary proposal that will give you a decent idea if something is viable there for you in terms of green energy.
Excellent. Another question, someone just moved to Columbia. Would they be able to get, so they don't have that past year's data, would they be able to get Ameren and Columbia Water and Light usage data from the city or from Ameren for the property, even though they weren't?
That's a good question too. So like when I reach out to Columbia Water and Light, Boone Electric, they're gonna send me the history for the house no matter who lived there. So a lot of the times with Columbia Water and Light, they will say, hey, just so you know, there was a service change on this month. So that kind of gives me a heads up. It is really tough to determine someone's annual kilowatt hour usage when they haven't lived there. So what I do is I take the history that's available for the home. So if you've lived there 3 months, I'm gonna pull 3 years of history, I'm gonna do a 3-year average, and we're gonna base that system off of that usage.
Hi, so I have a question. Dan came out to our home yesterday and, we have a large, silver maple in front, and I really appreciated that. He just was very upfront that said, after you sent us the information, really, you need to think about whether you want to keep the tree or take it down. So I really appreciate the forthrightness and information that Dogwood provides. And then the other thing I wanted you to say a little bit about was maybe the requirements for the age of your roof and how that interacts with solar.
Good call. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. We always recommend that folks have a minimum of 10 years remaining on their shingles. And the reason being that is, not only is it expensive to install new solar on your home, it's also very expensive to take it off and put it back on in conjunction with a roof replacement. There are a lot of parts and pieces that are one-time use. Reason being is they have waterproofing on them for like the solar feet and things like that. So there is a pretty heavy cost that comes with the remove and replace. On average, starting out, those remove and replaces are gonna be between $350 and $550 per panel to remove and replace, and that's $350 to $550 per panel. And the reason being is, again, because of the feet, as well as some of the unreusable items. And then also too, the site influences that price as well. If you have a nice, like little low pitch 6 or 8, 6/12 or 8/12 roof, that's gonna be on the lower end. But if you got a 10/10 or a 12/10, it's gonna be pricey to do a remove and replace. So that's why we always recommend folks have a minimum of 10 years remaining on your shingles. I'm not saying we won't install on an old roof, but just be aware that that cost will come later down the road. So kind of calculate that in your ROI as well. I actually had a conversation with a gentleman one time and during the last couple of months about this, and his remove and replace was actually going to be more than his federal tax credit. So I kind of suggested, hey, figure out what you want to do on the roofing. If there's not enough time to get a roof replaced, you're still going to be ahead, if you did it on the back end kind of deal. So good question though. I appreciate that one.
Other questions? I'm sorry, I think I put it in the chat, it's PV as in Victor Watts.
Yeah,
Okay, and what does PV stand for?
photovoltaics, which is what solar panels are. Yeah, PV watts is, if you Google PV watts, it'll bring you to that website.
Okay.
I have a question. Now that Columbia Water and Light has found it necessary to raise their rates on October 1st, have you started using those in your proposals?
Yeah, good question. And actually we have. So at the beginning of this year, within our Columbia Water and Light energy profile, as well as our Boone Electric energy profile, we have built a 3% annual power cost adjustment in there. So when I do my modeling for your preliminary proposal as well as your official proposal that we're gonna sit down and walk you through, that does include a 3% annual power cost adjustment. Yes.
We had another question online about, not quite understanding what the tiers mean. If someone could explain those tiers again, the different tiers of pricing and when those kick in.
Okay, I think I can handle that one. So basically, the way this program works is, it's encouraging other folks, neighbors, friends to buy solar. And currently, we're in tier 1 pricing, which means the price is $2.68 per watt. Once we sell enough solar to get out of tier 1, the price actually goes down, which means like instead of $2.68 per watt, it goes down to $2.65 per watt. And then as we sell more and as we sell more and as we sell more, the price goes down. As mentioned earlier, if you sign up in tier 1 and get a contract signed with us and you sign up at $2.68, and at the end of the program, we end up being in like, say, tier 4 and we're at $2.60 per watt. You'll get a rebate check for the difference of that price, because everyone else signed up and got the program to tier 4. I hope that answered that question better.
Questions?
Well, this one, oops. So I just want to say thank you to all of our speakers, to Frank Weimer from Dogwood Solar, Carolyn Amperan with the steering committee and the Sierra Club, and Casey Kyler from Solar Crowdsource. I encourage people to look into the program and get an assessment. And I did want to thank the library again and Lauren Williams and her assistant, John, yeah, for running our Zoom program or our online program today. And the last thing I wanted to mention was we're having a little switch in our Lunch and Learn programs coming up. In October, we're going to have our Lunch and Learn October 15th on immigration. And we're looking at getting a speaker from the Kinder Institute. We don't have the exact person yet. And then for November 12th, the Columbia City Attorney, Nancy Thompson, will be our guest speaker, and she will be talking about ethics in city government, what it is and why it is important, a very timely subject for not only local government, but state and national government also. So thank you for joining us. And again, this program will be available on YouTube. Please share it with others. Thank you.